The giant screen in the council chamber showed Earth spinning slowly in space. The planet looked peaceful and small. Nobody in the room knew that everything was about to change. Commander Jake Morrison stood still at his post. His uniform was clean and pressed. Next to him, Kate Sullivan held her electronic notepad so tight her hands hurt. They both knew this meeting would not go well. The alien leader spoke in a deep voice that echoed through the hall. His name was Zarthok, and he came from the Krillian Empire. He was tall with strange tentacles on his face that moved when he talked. He looked at the humans like they were insects. His message was clear and simple. Earth had 3 days to give up. They must surrender their weapons, close their military bases, and follow galactic law. If they refused, the council would attack. Jake looked around the room. There were aliens from dozens of different worlds. Some had scales, others had fur. Some breathed different air and sat in special tanks. All of them looked at the humans with the same expression. They thought Earth was weak. They thought humans were primitive creatures who got lucky and found space travel. They did not understand what humans were really capable of, Kate whispered to Jake. She asked if they should call home. Jake shook his head. Their bosses on Earth already knew what was happening. Every word spoken in this chamber was being recorded and sent back to the planet. Right now, important people were meeting in secret rooms, making plans. Earth would not surrender. Everyone knew that. The question was what would happen next. Ambassador Ryan Chen stepped forward to speak. He was an older man with gray hair and a calm face. He had been a diplomat for 30 years. He knew how to talk to people, even alien people. He thanked the council for their message. His voice was polite and respectful. Then he said something that made everyone gasp. He said no, Earth would not surrender. Earth would not give up its freedom. Earth would not bow to anyone. The room exploded with noise. Aliens shouted in languages Jake could not understand. Some stood up from their seats. Others made strange sounds that might have been laughter or anger. Zarthok's face tentacles turned dark red. He slammed his hand on the table. The sound was like thunder. He said that no species had ever refused a council order. Earth was making a terrible mistake. They would regret this decision. The screen changed. Now it showed thousands of spaceships. They were huge and covered in weapons. The ships were moving toward Earth's solar system. Zarthok explained that this was the Council's armada. 3,000 warships with enough firepower to destroy entire planets. They would arrive at Earth in 3 days. The humans had until then to change their minds. After that, there would be no more chances. Jake felt his heart beating fast. 3,000 ships. Earth's public fleet only had 200 vessels. The math was simple and terrifying, but he noticed something in Ryan's eyes. The ambassador was not afraid. He was not worried at all. In fact, he almost looked like he wanted to smile. Jake wondered what secrets Earth was hiding. What did Ryan know that the council did not? The meeting ended badly. The human delegation left the chamber, while aliens stared at them with cold eyes. Some of the aliens looked sorry for them. They thought the humans were brave but stupid. They thought Earth would be destroyed in 3 days. They did not know that humans had been preparing for war since the day they met their first alien. Back on Earth, emergency sirens were ringing in government buildings around the world. President Sophie Williams sat in a deep underground bunker surrounded by military officers and scientists. The room had computers and screens covering every wall. In the center was a large table with a map of the solar system. Red dots showed where the enemy fleet was coming from. Blue dots showed Earth's defenses. General Alex Martinez stood at attention. He was a big man with short hair and a serious face. He had spent his entire life in the military. He had fought in wars on Earth before humans went to space. Now he commanded all of Earth's military forces. He told the president that the fleet was ready. Every ship, every weapon, every soldier was prepared for battle. They just needed her order to begin. Sophie looked tired. She had not slept in 2 days. Being president was hard enough without an alien invasion to worry about. She asked Alex if they could win. He did not answer right away. He looked at the map and then back at her. He said they could win, but it would not be easy. Many people would die. Many ships would be destroyed. But Earth would survive. Humans always survived. A woman in a white lab coat spoke up. Her name was Emma Clark, and she ran the weapons research department. She looked excited despite the serious situation. She told the president about the secret projects. For 5 years, Earth had been building weapons in hidden factories. They made things the Council had never seen before. Things that were illegal under galactic law. Things that could turn the tide of battle. Emma pulled up images on the main screen. There were satellites that were actually weapons platforms, mining equipment that could fire missiles, cargo ships that carried troops instead of supplies. The moon had guns hidden under fake mining buildings. Mars had underground bases full of soldiers and tanks. Even the asteroids between planets had been turned into weapons. Earth's entire solar system was a trap waiting to spring shut. Sophie made her decision. She gave the order that would change human history forever. Earth would fight. They would not run and they would not hide. If the Council wanted war, they would get war. But it would not be the easy victory they expected. Earth would show the galaxy what humans could do when they were pushed too far. Messages went out to every military base on Earth and in space. Soldiers reported to their stations. Pilots climbed into their ships. Engineers powered up weapons that had never been fired before. Families said goodbye to their loved ones, not knowing if they would ever see them again. The whole planet held its breath and waited. In orbit around Earth, hidden among the thousands of satellites, weapons came online. Their computers woke up and began tracking targets. They were programmed to fire automatically when the enemy came close enough. No human would need to pull the trigger. The machines would do the killing on their own. On the moon, Colonel Ben Parker walked through the underground base. He passed rooms full of computers and weapons. He passed soldiers who were checking their equipment one last time. He reached the command center and sat down at his station. From here, he could control every defense on the lunar surface. He had trained for this moment his whole career. Now it was finally here. Far out in space, past Mars and Jupiter, Captain Chris Wade commanded a secret fleet. 50 ships floated in the darkness, powered down so no one could detect them. They drifted like dead metal, but they were very much alive. Inside, crews waited in silence. They had been hiding here for months, waiting for this day. When the battle started, they would be Earth's secret weapon. The enemy would never see them coming. The countdown began. 72 hours until the Council's deadline. 72 hours until the largest space battle in human history. The aliens thought they were coming to punish primitive rebels. They thought Earth would beg for mercy. They were about to learn a hard lesson. Humans did not beg. Humans fought. And when humans fought, they fought to win no matter the cost. Back in the Council chamber, Zarthok celebrated with his supporters. They drank strange liquids and made speeches about how they would teach Earth a lesson. They talked about dividing up human territory after the war. They planned who would govern the defeated planet. They were so confident in their victory that they did not notice something important. Not all the Council members were celebrating. Some sat quietly with worried faces. They remembered old stories about species that underestimated their enemies. Those species were not around anymore. Deep under the red surface of Mars, machines hummed to life. The facility did not exist on any official map. No tourist had ever seen it. No news reporter had ever written about it. Colonel Ben Parker stood in the control room watching screens light up one by one. Each screen showed a different weapon system coming online. The orbital defense platforms stopped pretending to be simple satellites. Their solar panels folded back to reveal railguns and missile launchers. Ben had worked on this project for 3 years. He knew every weapon, every hiding spot, every trick they had prepared. The Council's spies had been watching Earth closely, but they only saw what humans wanted them to see. They saw the public fleet of 200 ships. They saw normal military bases and standard weapons. They never looked closely at the mining operations or the communication satellites. That was their first mistake. On the moon, engineer Lisa Monroe checked the power readings from the hidden generators. The numbers looked good. Everything was working perfectly. She walked through tunnels carved deep into the lunar rock. Above her head, the surface looked like any normal mining operation. Below ground was a different story. There were weapons everywhere. Big guns that could shoot metal rods into space. Missile silos hidden under fake equipment. Barracks full of soldiers ready to fight. Lisa had helped design these systems. She was proud of her work. The mass drivers were her favorite creation. They looked like simple machines for launching ore containers into space. But with a few adjustments, they could accelerate projectiles to incredible speeds. The math was beautiful and terrifying. A chunk of metal moving fast enough did not need explosives. The kinetic energy alone could destroy a ship. Physics was the most powerful weapon of all. Out past Jupiter, Captain Chris Wade floated in zero gravity inside his ship. The carrier was completely dark and cold. They had shut down everything that might give off a signal. No engines, no lights, no radio. 50 ships drifted like debris among the asteroids. The crews wore thick jackets because there was no heat. They ate cold food because they could not risk cooking. They had been living like this for 2 months, waiting. Chris looked through the window at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Council's fleet was coming. They thought they were sneaking up on Earth. They did not know they were walking into an ambush. Each of the 50 carriers held experimental fighters and drones. The weapons on these craft violated every treaty the Council had ever written. Humans had built them anyway. When your survival was at stake, rules did not matter much. Back on Earth, the clock kept ticking. 48 hours left. The Council's fleet was getting closer. Ambassador Ryan Chen requested one more meeting with the Council. This time he had something to show them. This time Earth would give them a demonstration. The Council agreed, probably thinking the humans were going to surrender. They were wrong. The Council chamber filled with aliens once again. They looked smug and confident. Zarthok sat in his chair like a king on a throne. He smiled when Ryan walked in. He thought this would be the moment when Earth begged for mercy. He thought the humans would cry and plead for their lives. His face tentacles were a light, happy color. That was about to change. Ryan activated the holographic display. It showed a live video feed from the outer solar system. There was a small human ship approaching one of the Council's observation stations. The station was a fortress designed to watch for threats. It had thick armor and powerful shields. Hundreds of weapons pointed outward in all directions. A single small ship should not have been a threat to it at all. The aliens in the chamber laughed. Some made jokes about the tiny human vessel. They asked if Earth was planning to ram the station. They asked if humans understood how shields worked. Ryan said nothing. He just waited and watched. Lisa Monroe's voice came through the speakers. She was broadcasting from Earth. She spoke one word: fire. The human ship released a single projectile. It did not glow. It did not make a bright exhaust trail. It was just a cylinder of dense metal, but it was moving faster than anything the Council had ever seen. The station's computers did not even have time to react. One moment the fortress was there. The next moment it was gone. Completely gone. Just a cloud of hot gas expanding into space. The Council chamber went silent. Every alien stared at the screen where the station had been. They could not believe what they just saw. Zarthok's tentacles turned white. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. A fortress that could survive attacks from entire fleets had been destroyed in less than a second. By one shot, from one small ship. Ryan let them think about it for a moment. Then he started talking. His voice was calm and clear. He explained that the projectile had been accelerated to a fraction of light speed. At that velocity, shields were useless. The armor might as well have been paper. The station's weapons never had a chance to fire back. It was over before the computers even knew they were under attack. He continued explaining. Earth had built hundreds of these weapons. They were positioned all around the solar system, hidden on moons inside asteroids orbiting in the dark. Some were on ships that looked like cargo vessels. Others were disguised as mining equipment. The Council's spies had been looking, but they had been looking for the wrong things. They looked for traditional weapons. Humans had built something new. Ryan walked around the chamber as he spoke. He pointed at different Council members. He told them that their fleet was already in range of these weapons. Right now, hundreds of guns were pointed at their ships. The targeting computers were locked on. All it would take was one command, and the Council's armada would be erased from existence. Just like the observation station, quick and clean and total. An alien representative stood up. Her voice was shaking. She asked if Ryan was threatening them. Ryan smiled, but it was not a friendly smile. He said he was not making threats. He was explaining reality. Earth had given the Council a choice. They could withdraw their fleet and sit down for real negotiations, or they could attack and find out exactly how many weapons humanity had been hiding. The choice was theirs. Zarthok found his voice again. He shouted that this was a trick. One destroyed station did not prove anything. Earth was bluffing. They could not possibly have enough weapons to fight the entire armada. Ryan shrugged. He said that was a theory Zarthok was welcome to test. But he should know that the theory would cost thousands of lives. Maybe millions. Was his pride worth that price? The Council erupted into arguments. Some species wanted to retreat immediately. Others wanted to press forward. Some suggested negotiations. A few even suggested asking Earth to join their side instead of fighting against them. The unity the Council had shown earlier was gone. Ryan had cracked their confidence with a single demonstration. While the aliens argued, Kate Sullivan watched the tactical display on her tablet. She could see the Council's fleet. They had stopped moving forward. The ships were holding position while their commanders waited for orders. Good. That meant they were thinking. Thinking was better than shooting. Maybe they could avoid this war after all. But Jake Morrison was not so optimistic. He had studied military history. He knew that pride could make people do stupid things. Leaders sometimes chose war even when they knew they would lose. They could not stand the embarrassment of backing down. He watched Zarthok's face and worried. The alien leader looked angry and humiliated. That was a dangerous combination. The council session ended without a decision. They would meet again in 12 hours. Until then, both sides would wait. The fleet stayed where it was. Earth's weapons remained armed and ready. Diplomats on both sides tried to find a peaceful solution. But everyone knew the truth. War was probably coming. The only question was when and how bad it would be. Ryan and his team returned to their quarters. He sat down heavily in a chair. Kate brought him water and he drank it slowly. He looked exhausted. Giving that presentation had taken everything he had. Now they could only wait and see if it had been enough. He thought about his family back on Earth, his wife and children. He wondered if he would ever see them again. Jake stood by the window looking at the stars. Somewhere out there, human soldiers were preparing for battle. Ships were checking their weapons. Pilots were running simulations. Engineers were making final adjustments to untested technology. The whole human race was holding its breath. In less than a day, they would know if peace was possible, or if humanity would have to fight for its freedom against impossible odds. The deadline came and went. Earth sent no surrender message. The silence from the human homeworld was their answer. In the council chamber, Zarthok stood and addressed his supporters. His tentacles were dark with anger. He said that Earth had made its choice and now would face the consequences. Pride would not let him back down. His empire had never retreated from primitives. They would not start now. The order went out to the Armada. Advance and attack. 3,000 warships began moving toward Earth. Their weapons powered up. Their shields activated. The crews prepared for battle. Most of them expected an easy victory. They had overwhelming numbers and superior technology, or so they thought. They were about to learn a painful lesson about assumptions. Admiral Grace Turner sat in the Earth Defense Command Center, deep in space above the planet. The room was filled with screens and computers. Officers worked at their stations tracking every enemy ship. Grace had fought in naval battles back when ships sailed on water. Now she commanded fleets that sailed through space. The principles were the same. Know your enemy. Use your advantages. Hit them where they are weak. She looked at the tactical display. 3,000 red dots representing enemy ships, 200 blue dots representing Earth's visible fleet. On paper, it looked hopeless. But Grace knew something the enemy did not. Those 200 blue ships were not the real fleet. They were bait, decoys filled with remote control systems and just enough crew to make them look real. The actual fighting would be done by weapons the Council had no idea existed. The Council fleet entered the outer solar system. They passed Neptune and Uranus without incident. They moved through the space where the asteroid belt should have been, but humans had cleared it years ago. The rocks had been turned into raw materials for building stations and ships. Or so the Council believed. In reality, many of those asteroids had been turned into weapons. Lieutenant Sam Peterson sat at the weapons control station. His fingers hovered over the activation button. He was young, only 25 years old. This was his first real battle. He was nervous and excited at the same time. Grace had told him to wait for her signal. She wanted the enemy deep in the trap before springing it. Every second felt like an hour. Finally, Grace gave the order. Now, every satellite around Earth suddenly came alive. Thousands of platforms that looked like simple communication equipment transformed into weapons. Solar panels folded back. Missile hatches opened. Railguns emerged from hidden compartments. The space around Earth lit up with muzzle flashes and rocket exhaust. The Council ships found themselves in the middle of a storm of fire. The enemy shields held at first. They were designed to stop energy weapons and conventional missiles. But the railgun projectiles were different. They were just chunks of metal moving incredibly fast. When they hit shields, they punched straight through. Ship after ship started taking damage. Hulls cracked. Atmosphere vented into space. The Council fleet tried to return fire, but they could not lock onto the small, fast-moving platforms. Then the laser arrays activated. These were not the small lasers the Council knew about. These were massive weapons drawing power directly from the sun through relay satellites. The beams could cut through ship armor like a knife through warm butter. 3 Council cruisers were sliced in half in the first minute. The beautiful formations the fleet had maintained broke apart as captains tried desperately to evade. Captain Chris Wade received his signal. It was time. He gave the order to his hidden fleet. 50 carriers powered up their engines. Lights came on. Weapons armed. They had been hiding in the cold darkness for so long. Now they surged forward like wolves attacking from ambush. The Council's sensors finally detected them, but it was too late to prepare a proper defense. Each carrier launched its payload. Thousands of small drones poured out into space. They were too small for the enemy's big guns to target effectively. The drones swarmed around the Council ships like angry insects. Each one carried just enough explosives to damage critical systems, engines, weapons, life support. The Council's point defense systems tried to shoot them down, but there were simply too many. On the moon, engineer Nicole Hayes pressed the launch button. The mass drivers fired. Huge metal rods shot off the lunar surface at incredible speed. They did not need guidance systems. They were aimed at where the enemy ships would be, not where they were. The math had been calculated weeks ago. The physics was simple. The result was devastating. The tungsten rods hit their targets like hammers from heaven. Each one contained so much kinetic energy that the impacts created small explosions. Council ships that survived the first wave of attacks found themselves facing follow-up strikes from multiple directions. Their captains tried to retreat, but the drones had damaged their engines. They were sitting targets. Within minutes, dozens more ships were disabled or destroyed. Grace watched the battle unfold on her screens. The plan was working better than she had hoped. The enemy had walked right into the trap. Their superior numbers meant nothing when they could not maneuver or defend themselves properly. She felt no joy in the destruction. War was ugly and people were dying, but this was survival. Earth had not started this fight, but they would finish it. The Council fleet tried to regroup. Admiral Torvon, commanding the Armada, ordered his ships to form defensive clusters. If they stayed close together, they could support each other with overlapping shields and combined firepower. It was a good strategy in theory. In practice, it made them easier targets for the mass drivers. The tungsten rods could not miss when the ships were packed so tightly together. 4 hours into the battle, the Council fleet was in chaos. Ships were burning. Escape pods were launching in all directions. Communications were jammed by Earth's electronic warfare systems. Captains could not coordinate with each other. Some tried to fight. Others tried to run. A few tried to surrender, but there was so much confusion that their signals were lost in the noise. Jake Morrison watched from the observation deck of the command center. He could see the flashes of explosions even from this distance. Each flash represented a ship, and each ship had a crew. He thought about the aliens inside those vessels. They were just following orders like soldiers everywhere. Most of them probably did not want this war, but they were here anyway, and now they were paying the price for their leader's arrogance. Kate Sullivan worked frantically at her station, trying to coordinate humanitarian efforts. Some enemy ships were broadcasting distress calls. Their life support was failing. Their crews were dying. She wanted to send rescue ships, but Grace refused. Not while the battle was still ongoing. It was too dangerous. Kate understood, but it still felt wrong. War made people do terrible things even when they were trying to do the right thing. 6 hours after the battle began, it was effectively over. The Council fleet had been reduced from 3,000 ships to less than 1,000 operational vessels. Earth's casualties were minimal. 50 decoy ships destroyed exactly as planned. A few weapons platforms damaged, some drones lost, but no real warships, no major facilities. The human fleet had never even left port. Grace opened a communication channel to the surviving Council ships. Her message was broadcast in multiple languages. She told them to power down their weapons and withdraw from the solar system immediately. Any ship that tried to continue fighting would be destroyed without mercy. Any ship that retreated peacefully would be allowed to leave. The choice was theirs. They had 1 hour to decide. The response was almost immediate. The surviving ships began to retreat. Their engines burned at maximum power as they fled. Some were damaged and moved slowly. Others left their wounded behind in their panic to escape. It was not an organized withdrawal. It was a rout. The mighty Council Armada had been broken by a supposedly primitive species. In the Council chamber, far from the battle, representatives watched the disaster unfold on their displays. The room was silent except for the sound of breathing and the hum of computers. Zarthok sat frozen in his chair. His tentacles had turned pale gray. His dreams of an easy victory had become a nightmare of defeat. The Council had learned what Earth wanted them to know. Humans were not primitives. They were warriors, and they would not be conquered. Grace allowed herself a small smile. The first battle was won, but she knew this was not the end. It was just the beginning. The Council would not accept this defeat lying down. They would regroup and try again with different tactics. Earth needed to press their advantage while they had it. The war was far from over. In fact, the hardest part was still to come. The Council expected Earth to stop after their victory. Most species would celebrate and try to make peace. General Alex Martinez had different plans. He stood in the war room with President Sophie Williams and showed her a map of Council territory. He pointed to shipyards, supply depots, and command centers. If Earth wanted to win this war permanently, they needed to strike now while the enemy was confused and scared. Sophie looked at the map for a long time. She thought about what Alex was suggesting. Taking the war into enemy territory was risky. It would make Earth look like the aggressors, but Alex argued that the Council would attack again as soon as they recovered. Better to hit them hard now and force them to negotiate from weakness. Sophie made her decision. She gave the order to attack. Major Kyle Sanders commanded the expeditionary force. 50 of Earth's newest warships, fresh from secret construction yards, gathered for their mission. These ships used experimental jump drive technology that let them cross vast distances almost instantly. The technology was dangerous and unpredictable. 2 test ships had been lost during development, but it worked often enough to be useful in war. Kyle briefed his captains before the mission. He told them the plan was simple. Jump in fast, hit the target hard, jump out before the enemy could respond. Speed and surprise were everything. The ships were not heavily armored. They could not survive a long battle, but they did not need to. They just needed to cause enough damage to keep the Council off balance. The first target was a shipyard in the Draken system. The facility had been building warships for 300 years. It was protected by powerful shields and automated defense platforms. The Council considered it impregnable. They were wrong. Kyle's fleet emerged from hyperspace right on top of the shipyard before anyone knew what was happening. Commander Hannah Blake led the attack wing. Her ships fired missiles loaded with computer viruses. When the missiles hit the shipyard's shields, they did not explode. Instead, they transmitted code that corrupted the defense systems. The shields flickered and died. The automated weapons started targeting each other. Within minutes, the shipyard was defenseless and confused. Hannah sent in the boarding teams. Soldiers in powered armor crashed through the shipyard's hull and secured key sections. They moved fast, using tactics practiced hundreds of times in simulation. The shipyard workers surrendered quickly. Most of them were engineers and technicians, not soldiers. They had no interest in dying for a war they did not understand. The humans planted explosives on the construction equipment and left. The whole raid took less than an hour. As Kyle's fleet jumped away, the charges detonated. The shipyard did not explode dramatically like in movies. It just stopped working. The construction bays were wrecked. The manufacturing equipment was scrapped. It would take years and billions to repair. The Council had just lost a major source of new warships. Ambassador Kate Sullivan traveled with the fleet as a diplomatic liaison. After each raid, she broadcast a message to the local populations. She explained that Earth did not want to hurt civilians. The war was against the Council leadership who had threatened humanity, not against ordinary people living their lives. Anyone who wanted peace should pressure their governments to negotiate. The message was effective. On several Council worlds, protests began. Citizens demanded to know why their leaders had started a war with Earth. They asked why resources were being wasted on military expeditions instead of being used at home. The Council was facing a crisis not just militarily but politically. Their own people were turning against them. The raids continued for weeks. Earth ships hit supply depots, communication hubs, and military bases. Each strike was surgical and precise. The humans avoided civilian targets. They did not want to be seen as monsters, but they were ruthless about destroying anything that could support the Council's war effort. The message was clear. Earth could reach anywhere in Council space. Nowhere was safe. Captain Laura Martinez commanded the siege of Nexus Prime, the Council's regional headquarters. The planet was supposed to be the most defended world outside the core systems. Automated weapons covered every approach. Energy shields protected every important building. The Council had spent centuries making it impossible to conquer. Humans found a way anyway. Specialist Dan Cooper was a genius with computers. He led a team of hackers who spent weeks studying the planet's defense network. They found something interesting. All the automated systems were controlled by a central computer. If they could access that computer, they could take control of everything. The problem was the computer was deep underground and surrounded by guards. Dan's solution was creative. He built a computer virus and hid it inside a normal communication signal. The signal was sent to the planet pretending to be routine traffic from a Council ship. The defense computer received it and was infected. Slowly, quietly, the virus spread through the entire network. When Dan activated it, the planet's weapons turned on each other. The shields protecting the headquarters collapsed. Human dropships landed around the headquarters building. Soldiers walked in through the front door because there was no one left to stop them. The Council officials inside surrendered without a fight. They had seen the battle reports from Earth's solar system. They knew resistance was pointless. Better to live as prisoners than die as statistics. Lieutenant Maya Roberts interviewed the captured officials. She was looking for information about the Council's decision-making process. What she found was surprising. Many of the prisoners said they had opposed the war from the beginning. They argued it was wrong to attack Earth without provocation, but they were overruled by Zarthok and his faction. The war was not as unanimous as it appeared. Maya sent her report back to Earth immediately. President Sophie Williams read it with great interest. This changed things. If the Council was divided, maybe a diplomatic solution was possible. Earth did not need to defeat every species in the galaxy. They just needed to convince enough of them that peace was better than war. The question was how to do that without looking weak. Sophie called a meeting with her advisors. General Alex wanted to keep attacking. He said momentum was on their side and they should not stop. Ambassador Ryan Chen disagreed. He said Earth had made its point. Continuing the raids would just create more enemies. They needed to offer the Council a way out that let them save face. The debate went on for hours. Finally, Sophie made her choice. She ordered the fleet to stop offensive operations but maintain their positions. Earth would not retreat, but they would also not advance. She drafted a message to the Council. The message was simple. Earth was ready to negotiate a permanent peace. But the negotiations would be between equals. No more ultimatums, no more threats, just honest discussion about how to move forward. The message was broadcast across Council space. Every species received it. Every government saw it. The ball was now in their court. They could choose to continue fighting and lose more ships and facilities, or they could sit down and talk. Earth had demonstrated they could not be defeated. Now it was time to see if the Council could admit that. Kyle Sanders kept his fleet in position, engines warm and weapons ready. He hoped the Council would choose peace. His crews were tired. They had been fighting for months with little rest. But they would keep going if they had to. That was the human way. Once committed to something, they saw it through to the end no matter the cost. On Council worlds, emergency meetings were held. Representatives argued about what to do. Some wanted revenge. Others wanted peace. A few suggested joining forces with Earth instead of fighting against them. The galaxy was changing fast. Old alliances were breaking apart. New possibilities were emerging. The war had started as an attempt to put humans in their place. Instead, it had given Earth a place at the table they could never have gotten through peaceful means alone. Kate Sullivan prepared for whatever came next. If the Council chose peace, she would help negotiate the treaty. If they chose war, she would continue her work supporting the military. Either way, Earth was not backing down. They had come too far and sacrificed too much. The galaxy would accept humanity as equals, or learn to live with humans as permanent adversaries. There was no middle ground anymore. The Galactic Council chamber was different this time. Instead of the usual confident atmosphere, there was tension and uncertainty. Representatives from dozens of species gathered. But they were not here to pass judgment. They were here to decide their own future. The military defeats had shattered their confidence. The question now was how to move forward. Ambassador Ryan Chen walked into the chamber with his head high. He was not alone. General Alex Martinez walked beside him in his crisp military uniform. Admiral Grace Turner was there too, wearing her medals from the recent battles. President Sophie Williams herself had made the trip, showing Earth took this moment seriously. The human delegation took seats at a table that had been added to the chamber floor. They were no longer standing at a podium like supplicants. They were sitting as equals. Zarthok tried one last time to salvage his position. His tentacles were pale, but he spoke with forced confidence. He said Earth's aggression proved humans were dangerous. The raids on Council territory showed their violent nature. How could such a species be trusted as members? He looked around the room, hoping for support. He found very little. Sophie Williams stood to respond. She spoke calmly but firmly. She reminded everyone that Earth did not start this war. The Council issued an ultimatum demanding surrender. Earth refused and defended itself. Only after winning the defensive battle did they take the fight forward. And even then, they avoided civilian casualties and offered peace. The aggressor was not Earth. The aggressor was sitting in this chamber. A representative from the Vax species spoke up. Her voice was quiet but clear. She said her government had opposed the war from the start. They warned that attacking Earth was unwise, but Zarthok and his supporters pushed forward anyway. Now thousands were dead and the Council's reputation was damaged. It was time to admit the mistake and make things right. Others joined in. One by one, Council members spoke about their doubts. Some had voted against the war but were ignored. Others had gone along reluctantly because they feared standing alone against the Krillian Empire. But now they had seen what humans could do. Earth had proven they could not be bullied or conquered. The choice was clear. Accept them as partners or face them as enemies forever. The vote was called. Each species cast their decision publicly. The first few votes were for accepting Earth, then more. Some voted against, mostly species closely allied with the Krillian Empire. But the majority was clear. Earth would be granted full Council membership. They would have a voice in galactic affairs. Their ships would have safe passage through Council space. The era of human isolation was over. Zarthok watched his power crumble. His tentacles turned almost black with emotion. He stood and tried to leave the chamber. Guards stopped him. A formal investigation into his conduct would begin immediately. Many species wanted answers about how an unauthorized war could have been started. Zarthok would face trial for his actions. His political career was finished. Ryan Chen gave a short speech thanking the Council for their decision. He promised that Earth would be a responsible member of the galactic community. Humans would contribute their knowledge and resources. They would work toward peace and prosperity for all species. But he also made something clear. Earth would never be weak again. They would maintain a strong military, not for conquest but for protection. Never again would humanity be threatened with extinction. The formal treaty was signed over the next few weeks. Diplomats worked out the details of trade agreements, military cooperation, and cultural exchange. Earth opened its borders to alien visitors. Humans began traveling to other worlds. The change happened faster than anyone expected. Just months ago, the two sides were at war. Now they were partners building a common future. Commander Jake Morrison returned to Earth as a hero. People celebrated in the streets, but Jake felt strange about it. Yes, they won. Yes, Earth was safe, but so many had died. Aliens who were just following orders. Humans who gave their lives in battle. Victory did not feel as good as he thought it would. It just felt like the end of something terrible. He visited a memorial being built for the fallen. The names of every human who died were carved in stone. But there was also a section for the aliens. Even though they were enemies, they deserved to be remembered. They had families too, dreams too. War had taken all of that away. Jake promised himself he would work to make sure their deaths meant something. He would help build the peace. Engineer Lisa Monroe found herself working on a joint research project. Human scientists collaborated with aliens from 5 different species. They were developing new energy systems that could benefit everyone. Lisa was amazed at what she learned. The aliens knew things humans had not discovered yet, and humans knew things that surprised the aliens. Together, they could achieve so much more than apart. She worked closely with a VAX engineer named Krell. At first, they did not understand each other very well. Different languages, different ways of thinking. But they found common ground in mathematics and physics. Equations were universal. As the months passed, they became friends. They talked about their homes, their families, their hopes for the future. Lisa realized that aliens were not so different from humans after all. The Krillian Empire struggled to adapt to the new reality. Their reputation was damaged. Their military was weakened. A new leader was chosen to replace Zarthok. She was younger and more open to cooperation. She reached out to Earth with offers of friendship. It would take time to heal the wounds, but she was willing to try. Sophie Williams accepted the offer cautiously. Trust had to be earned. Admiral Grace Turner created a new training program. The Earth Galactic Defense Academy would teach military strategy to both humans and aliens. Officers from different species would learn to work together. The idea was to build understanding and cooperation. If future wars happened, maybe they could be prevented through better communication. And if prevention failed, at least everyone would understand how to fight alongside each other, instead of against each other. Grace addressed the first graduating class. She stood on a stage looking at young faces, both human and alien. She told them that they were the future. The war had been necessary, but it was also tragic. Their generation had the chance to do better. They could build bridges instead of walls. They could choose cooperation over conflict. The choice was theirs. Kate Sullivan worked in the New Earth Embassy on a council world. Her job was to help smooth out the daily problems that came up between species. Misunderstandings about laws. Confusion about customs. Small disputes that could become big problems if not handled carefully. She found the work challenging but rewarding. Every problem solved was a step toward lasting peace. She met with families who had lost loved ones in the war. Both human families and alien families. She listened to their stories and their pain. She helped them get compensation and support. It was hard work emotionally. Some people were angry at her because she represented Earth. Others were grateful because she cared enough to help. Kate did her best for everyone, knowing she could never make the pain completely go away. Years passed. The war became history. Children grew up learning about it in school. The younger generation could not imagine a time when Earth was not part of the galactic community. Human merchants traded freely across dozens of worlds. Human artists shared their work with alien audiences. Human scientists made discoveries alongside alien colleagues. The integration was not perfect, but it was real. President Sophie Williams gave her final speech before retiring. She talked about the journey humanity had taken. From isolation to war to acceptance. She said the war was terrible, but it taught important lessons. Earth learned they could stand up for themselves. The Council learned that might did not make right. Everyone learned that cooperation was better than conflict. The future belonged to those who could work together. The Council chamber held a special ceremony. A monument was unveiled honoring those who died in the war. Human names and alien names side by side. Sophie stood next to the new Krillian leader. They held hands in a gesture of unity. Cameras from 100 worlds broadcast the moment. It was a powerful symbol. Former enemies standing together, choosing peace over vengeance, choosing the future over the past. Ryan Chen watched the ceremony from the audience. He was old now, ready to retire himself. He thought about that first meeting in this chamber when Zarthok issued the ultimatum. If someone had told him then that he would see this day, he would not have believed it. But here it was, peace, real peace. Not just the absence of war, but actual friendship and cooperation. Humanity had earned its place among the stars not through submission but through strength and wisdom. The galaxy had changed. Earth's ruthless response to the Council's threat had shocked everyone. But what truly amazed them was what happened after. Humans could have sought revenge. They could have conquered and dominated. Instead, they offered partnership. They proved that strength did not have to mean cruelty. Power did not have to mean oppression. Earth had rewritten the rules and made the galaxy better for it. 10 years after the war, Earth looked completely different. The sky above major cities was filled with ships from dozens of worlds. Alien tourists walked through human streets taking pictures and trying local food. Human children grew up with alien classmates, learning about different cultures and ways of thinking. The change that once seemed impossible had become normal life. Commander Jake Morrison was no longer a commander. He had retired from military service and became a teacher. He taught history at a university where students came from all over the galaxy. His classes were always full. Everyone wanted to hear first-hand accounts of the war from someone who had been there. Jake told them the truth, not glorified stories. War was ugly. People died. But sometimes fighting was necessary to protect what mattered. One of his best students was a young Krillian named Vex. His father had fought in the war on the Council's side. His ship was destroyed in the first battle near Earth. Vex came to university wanting to understand why the war happened. He wanted to make sure it never happened again. Jake spent extra time with Vex, helping him process complex emotions about his father's death and his people's role in starting the conflict. Kate Sullivan ran the Earth Institute for Galactic Understanding. The organization worked to prevent future conflicts through education and dialogue. They brought together young leaders from different species for training programs. The idea was simple. If people understood each other better, they would be less likely to fight. Kate believed this deeply. She had seen what misunderstanding and fear could cause. She organized exchange programs where humans lived on alien worlds and aliens lived on Earth. The programs were incredibly popular. Young people were eager to explore and learn. Some formed friendships that lasted lifetimes. A few even formed romantic relationships, though, that created its own complicated questions about culture and biology. Kate welcomed all of it. Connection was connection, regardless of form. Engineer Lisa Monroe had made an incredible discovery working with her alien colleagues. They found a way to generate clean energy from quantum fluctuations in space itself. The technology could provide unlimited power without pollution or resource depletion. It would change everything. Poor worlds could develop without destroying their environments. Space travel would become cheaper and easier. The discovery won them the Council Science Prize, the highest honor in the galaxy. Lisa shared the prize with Krell, her Vax colleague. At the ceremony, they both gave speeches. Lisa talked about how the breakthrough came from combining human intuition with Vax mathematical precision. Neither species could have done it alone. Krell agreed and added that science had no borders. Knowledge belonged to everyone. The audience, filled with beings from hundreds of worlds, gave them a standing ovation that lasted 5 minutes. The quantum energy technology spread quickly. Within 5 years, most major worlds had generators. Poverty decreased as cheap power enabled new industries. Environmental damage slowed and even reversed on some planets. The Council created a foundation to help smaller worlds adopt the technology. Earth contributed heavily to the foundation. They remembered what it was like to struggle and wanted to help others. Admiral Grace Turner had retired from active duty but remained involved in military education. The Defense Academy she founded now had campuses on 12 different worlds. Officers trained together, learning not just tactics but also how to work across cultural boundaries. Grace believed the next generation of military leaders needed to be diplomats as much as warriors. Force should always be the last option, not the first. She wrote a book about her experiences in the war. The book became required reading at military academies across the galaxy. In it, she talked honestly about her decisions, including the ones she regretted. She wrote about the enemy soldiers who died and how their deaths haunted her. She wrote about the responsibility that came with command. Young officers learned that victory had a cost, and good leaders never forgot that cost. General Alex Martinez took a position in the Council's peacekeeping force. He helped resolve conflicts between member species before they escalated into war. His reputation from the Earth conflict gave him credibility. When he spoke, people listened. He mediated disputes over territory, resources, and trade. His success rate was impressive. Most conflicts ended with negotiated settlements instead of violence. Alex worked closely with former enemies. One of his deputies was a Krillian officer who had fought against Earth. They had a complicated relationship at first. Both had lost friends in the war, but they learned to work together. Eventually, they became true partners. Alex said it proved that anyone could change if they wanted to. The past did not have to define the future. Ambassador Ryan Chen lived quietly in retirement. He spent his days gardening and writing his memoirs. Publishers were eager for his story, but Ryan took his time. He wanted to get it right. He wanted future generations to understand not just what happened, but why. He wanted them to learn from both the successes and the mistakes. The galaxy had changed so much, but human nature and alien nature were still complicated. He wrote about the moment he said no to the Council's ultimatum. People asked if he was scared. Of course he was scared, but fear could not be allowed to control decisions. Sometimes you had to stand up for what was right even when it was dangerous. That moment of defiance had led to war, but it had also led to respect. The galaxy learned that humans could not be bullied. That lesson was worth the price. President Sophie Williams passed away peacefully at age 92. Her funeral was attended by leaders from every council species. They came to honor the woman who guided Earth through its darkest hour. Speakers talked about her wisdom, her courage, and her commitment to peace after the fighting ended. Her legacy was a galaxy where cooperation mattered more than conquest, where differences were celebrated instead of feared. The new generation barely remembered the war. To them it was ancient history, something their grandparents talked about. They grew up in a galaxy where humans and aliens worked together naturally. They could not imagine a time when Earth stood alone against the Council. Some historians worried that forgetting the war might lead to repeating it. Others argued that moving past old conflicts was healthy and necessary. A young human girl named Amy Chen, Ryan's granddaughter, enrolled in the Defense Academy. She wanted to follow in her grandfather's footsteps, though in her own way. She studied diplomacy and conflict resolution alongside military tactics. Her best friend at the academy was a Krillian named Tor, grandson of a ship captain who died in the war. Together, they represented the hope of the future. Amy and Tor worked on a joint project about the war. They interviewed survivors and studied historical records. They learned about the pride and fear that led to conflict. They learned about the courage it took to make peace. Their conclusion was simple, but powerful. War happened when people stopped seeing each other as individuals and started seeing each other as enemies. Peace happened when they remembered their shared humanity, or in this case, shared personhood. The council chamber underwent renovation. The old design emphasized hierarchy, with some species elevated above others. The new design put everyone on the same level. No species was more important than another. Earth's representatives sat at the same table as the oldest and most powerful empires. The physical change reflected a philosophical one. The galaxy had learned that true strength came from unity, not domination. New challenges emerged as the galaxy grew closer. Economic integration created winners and losers. Cultural exchange sometimes led to conflict over values. Immigration policies caused heated debates. But these were problems of peace, not war. They were solved through negotiation and compromise, not violence. The Council had become a real governing body, instead of just a meeting place for powerful species to make demands. Earth's contribution to galactic culture was significant. Human, music, art, and literature spread across hundreds of worlds. Aliens were fascinated by human creativity and emotion. In return, humans learned from alien perspectives and techniques. The cultural exchange enriched everyone. New art forms emerged that blended different traditions. New musical styles combined instruments from multiple species. The galaxy became more than just a political entity. It became a true community. Scientists estimated that within a century, distinction between species would blur. Not physically, but socially. People would think of themselves as galactic citizens first and members of individual species second. Some resisted this idea, wanting to preserve their unique cultures. Others embraced it as natural evolution. The debate was healthy. It meant people cared about the future and wanted to shape it consciously. On the anniversary of the war's end, memorials were held on many worlds. People gathered to remember those who died and reflect on how far they had come. Jake Morrison stood at the memorial on Earth, now very old but still strong in spirit. Young people asked him what it was like. He told them war was the worst thing he ever experienced. But the peace that followed was the best. Both were worth remembering. The galaxy had been stunned by Earth's ruthless response to the Council's ultimatum. But the real surprise came after the fighting stopped. Humans proved that strength and compassion could coexist. They showed that winning did not.